What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today. Today, I'm excited to show off my Thavas premium deck profile that I took to Worlds. And so for those that don't know, we just had our Worlds qualifier in January 28th of 2023. I'm going to cover some of the key choices, some of the metagame that I was expecting, and so what also happened in the event, and also share some spice that I've been actually using, and explain some of the things that it actually provides for the Thavas decks and fixes some problems that Thavas has had over the years. So let's get right into it. Also, I've become an official Metafy coach for Card Fight Vanguard, and so if you ever want to get one-on-one time with me to help your skill level, go ahead and book a session with me. I can help with premium format, standard, or even clans like Force and many others, and even YouTube as well. I just want to help fellow amigos and make an impact within the community itself. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message too. You can use the link down below in the description to book your session as well. So real quickly with the metagame that I was expecting Steam Maidens, Norakami, Nightmare Dolls, Highlander, and even the Mirror Match. So really I was thinking those 5 decks, and 4 out of those 5 decks are right up to grade 3 and then right down back to grade 2. So it's like a fight of like basically who gets first stride, but also who survives that early aggression and is able to come on top to actually win the game too. So there might be some games that you don't even get to stride, and so those are some of the things that I was thinking, like I need some early game cards that help me but also are still functional during the stride turns if it comes to that. And then Norakami has been that matchup where, you know, you have to be worried about like, you know, the binding and the retiring, and then the G guards, and then of course like the stun verse and the exterminates. That's the stuff that I had to really account for. And even if the ban list did hit Colossus for Steam Maidens and also stun verse to 1, they're still very solid decks, and that's what I felt that was expected, and so that's what was my assumption. And so why Thavas? I ended up picking it because I felt like it's truly one of those top contenders, that it has that access of riding up to grade 3 and back down to 2, and you could do that once or twice, or you can go into the stride game with Genbo, which generates a lot of advantage. And the way the build is, it's supposed to be also be able to adapt, be conservative, but also be aggressive if needed to be. And there's also a tech that helps with the Norakami matchup too, but it also functions as multiple functioning roles that actually helps with the Thavas deck. So let me get right into the deck profile. So starting with the grade 3s and the grade 4s in the deck, we are playing 4 Thavas. You want to maximize because this is the card you ultimately want to ride, because you're able to pseudo stride with Lambros or Elder, and then at the end of the turn you can ride back to Thavas, or you can actually ride down back to grade 2. You're able to Soul Blast essentially your grade 3 during the battle phase with Lambros and also with Elder's on place ability. So you want to ride this to be able to do so as well, but do keep in mind that you require 3 rested rear guards at the beginning of the battle phase to even do that skill. So that's one of the problems that Thavas could struggle, is the consistency of having those bodies essentially to rest for. And also there is a factor where you can retire cards, so you can actually start eliminating your opponent's resources and actually win the attrition battle. So for me, I thought this actually had a good matchup against the other write down decks, because at the long game this is an Excel 2 clan while being able to retire your opponent's rearguards. And if you actually retire some of those key units for them, they cannot keep up the pressure and they're already losing advantage. And so Steam Maiden and Nightmare Dolls, for example, do lose advantage. So being able to retire that, and not only that, but as a rearguard too. So you're in the stride turns, you can call this on a Valeo's turn or on the Alexandros or Faraga's turn, and you're able to get rid of annoying units such as the Unruly Eradicator for Norakami, and then also like maybe a Hanali if that comes up in the being the case too. And it also rests rear guards, and you want to rest like Narissa, so that way Narissa can get beefed up too as well. So definitely run max copies, and I do play a 5th grade 3. That 5th grade 3 being Genovius. And so why? One, you want a 5th grade 3 because when you're writing down, you want a little more consistency of seeing a grade 3 excel, so you can actually keep the advantage up. And I was playing Blue Wave Tetra. And so the reason with Tetra is because you have a Blue Wave Vanguard, as soon as you ride up back, you may go into the stride game immediately. So your Vanguard heart doesn't really matter. So why not just have a Blue Wave and have access to Blue Wave strides, such as like Flood Hazard, or even Tetra Boil. And so I was playing the Flood Hazard, and I do play the Barragos, which is also a Blue Wave, which is the Blue Wave rearguard that needs to hit 4th battle or attack on the 4th battle. So then Flood Hazard can be a restander. So you have a restanding stride that you now have access to, maybe the 1st stride or maybe the 2nd stride. It's just another option, but I really got away from it because it didn't come up as often in my testing, especially against the write down decks. You really don't make it to stride, and I want to appreciate David's song for pointing this out, is that Genovius is a card that you can also, you know, ride up and then use later on if needed. But if your opponent rides down back to grade 2 and they're already high damage, let's say 4 or 5 damage, and they give you 4 damage, you can ride Genovias. You'll have the second Excel circle, so you have 4 rearguard attacks, then your Vanguard attacks, counterblast 1, restand all 4 rearguards that can attack, and now you have a total of 9 attacks while your opponent's still grade 2. So it's a mini Farragut's turn essentially, and you can finish them off and just win the game outright there. And again, that's why I'm saying that you may not even make it to the stride game, and that's why a card like Genovias actually helps out as well. Shout out to 50 Card Shop for even getting me this SP as well, and a lot of other SPs. I'll shout it out too. I was actually able to get the errata replaced too at the event too, so that's pretty cool. So this is actually the correct errata too as well. With the grade 4s, we're playing the Elder and the Lambros, and so in premium you only want to play 2 grade 4s, because if you're going first, then you're able to at least ride one of them. You have cards that also are Nikki, for example, that can recycle them if needed to be, so it's not the end of the world too. But if you're already immediately going into the stride game, it could become cluttered. And so people are most familiar with Lambros because you're able to do 5 attacks. It restands your board that you rested, so you can reuse your rearguards for, you know, an all-out attack assault. And with Magnolia is that it's free. That's why we play, because you don't have to have a counterblast if they denied you, or maybe you use a counterblast in the early game, which we do, or you're at 0. And so because of that, it has also inherent triple drive already, so then Thavas will give it the additional drive check to make a quad check. So as long as you're able to do 3 to 4 attacks with even Magnolia, it's still aggressive. And if your opponent's at 3 damage and the Magnolia attacks, it's very scary for them because you have quad check and you can potentially double crit them out of the game too as well. So that could be another win con in that point too as well. And then you'll be able to soul blast the Thavas during the battle phase, and then that can be actually how you ride down to grade 2 as well. So if you need to write down essentially. If you don't want to write down too, it could also call the Coral Assault or Pursuit Assault that you may have called, or any other grade 2 that you may have rolled with. So that gives you more utility to have a better attack pattern too as well. And lastly, real quickly, it's just the grade 3 Heal Guardians. These are necessary to even survive. Honestly, if you're going second, you want to see at least one of these, so that way you can stay at low damage. My goal was to stay at a 0 to 1 damage, ideally. I may go to 2 damage, especially if I open up with a certain grade 2 and then Lambros, so that would be a 2 counterblast turn. But other than that, this helped me survive those games. And especially before you ride up to grade 3, you want to use them. And honestly, during the stride turns, your G guards kind of suck compared to other clans. Like, Aqua Forge really desperately needs better G guards that aren't battle restricted, are rearguard dependent, and it's like for real. But these cards like are basically PGs almost, or they just shut down turns in the early game. So the grade 3 Heal Guardians themselves are even better than our G guards, especially in this metagame right now, because you're riding up and riding down. So before your opponent really takes that on you with multi-attacks, you can stop it with plus 10k to the Vanguard and survive. And this can be the grade 3 too, that you may have to ride back up at worst case scenario and go into the stride turns with Jumbo, so you're still able to do a decent turn. So this is a worst case scenario. And then moving forward, it might be Stride Fodder, so that way you can keep cards like Pursuit Assault, Coral Assault to do an effective turn as well. Onto the grade 2s, we're playing 4 Pursuit Assaults. Definitely, it's a staple for this clan. So plus 5k for each additional rearguard circle, continuous on your turn and your opponent's turn. So opponents can't get rid of it unless they're like stacking numbers on a rearguard or by retire effects, essentially by skills. The second skill is that you can Soul Blast 1, rest 2 of your rearguards, and draw a card. This helps with the Thavas having the 3 rested, so as long as you have a Pursuit Assault and your Thavas Vanguard, you're pretty much live. You just need the bodies for that, and I'll get into that as well because it's so important. But you definitely want to use this to keep getting advantage, but also this is your beater, and that will scale over time as you generate more Excel circles. So by the time you have a second Excel circle, and if this guy is on the Excel circle itself, it's a 24k hitter, which is basically Coral Assault numbers, and then after that it gets even bigger to 29, 33, or 34, and so on. And so this is a very valuable card, and you definitely want to play 4 of. Super imperative. For Coral Assault, and shout out to the amigos on Facebook that helped me out with Coral Assaults as well, and Shiga as well. Thank you again, amigo, for the SPs right last minute. But essentially, Coral Assault is a 24k beater that you can rely on. If you put in the Excel 2 circle, it's 29k, and if you did 4 more battles this turn, it can go into Soul to draw you a card. So this maintains advantage. This applies pressure, early game, late game, you name it. It's great Jumbo target to restand. This is great for Valeos to call and then also attack more. This is great for Farragut's to restand, and so on. And the most imperative thing that I've noticed with people in premium, they cut Coral Assault to 3. They reduce it to 3. And I think that's not the best choice right now in this metagame because you're fighting so many ride down decks. It's imperative to see Coral Assault even more because you're applying pressure, but also there is a ruling with the effects of the comprehensive rules. Coral Assault can actually go into Soul before your grade 4 pseudo Vanguard that you showed suitably retires. And if you don't have any Soul because you Soul blasted with Narissa, with Pursuit Assault, and so on, you empty your Soul essentially. You can put Coral Assault into your Soul, then your Magnolia or your Lambros retires, and now you have a valid target to choose to ride with. So that same Coral Assault that you use for rearguard can now be into the Soul and ridden as your new Vanguard. And so that's one of the things that helps make it consistent with this deck, because you'll be digging for pieces with Pursuit Assault, and you may be tempted to also aggressively use Narissa too as well. So that's even more important. And it's just a solid card because sometimes you hit some of these in the damage zone and you can only revive so many with some revival cards that we do play. But I definitely recommend 4, and it's free. And there's another card that also helps mitigate Coral Assault's problem because we need 4 or more other units that are rested to get the power. And it also is impactful even on the grade 2 turns where you may want to develop higher columns to compensate for more pressure. And now for the spice. Prod Palinrophilius, if that's how you pronounced it. And so what does this card do? It's a stoicheia unit placed on rearguard. You can counterblast 1 and generate 2 tokens. And I'm talking about these homies right here. So when you look at this card, you're looking like tokens in Aquaphors and in Thavas. Like, you know, theory, it makes no sense. How does that help with an Aquaphors deck to do more attacks, to do more advantage, and all these kinds of things? This card actually does so much practically for the clan too. And I want to give 2 shoutouts real quick. David Abitana, because he used one for Ripples back in the Ripple format, and also Duke Carfive because he felt like this is something that you should try out. I think it helps with some of the Aquaforce problem just from facing it, right? And so even you can learn from your opponents and other Aquaforce players. And how it helps out in the early game is that you can be aggressive against clans without losing too much advantage. You can basically take that damage while you're a grade 1, and when you ride to grade 2, you ride Pursuit Assault or Coral Assault, and then, or maybe another copy of this, and you call this to rearguard, and you can call 2 tokens. Now, how you place those tokens can really vary. You can have it where it's a column, and that's a 10k column, so you have 3 attacks easily. Or if you're going against a Force clan, and let's say they already ridden the grade 2, for example, like Steam Maidens or even Highlander, for example, they have 10k grade 2s. You can put them now behind your unit and your Vanguard, and now they're 14k columns. You don't have to call other boosters from hand to just hit over 10k. You can still hit over and actually do damage that way too. And with cards like Coral Assault, for example, Raphalios, the 2 tokens and your Vanguard are a total of 4 units that this essentially attacks the last time it's a 3rd attack, whether it be boosted or not. As long as it sees the 4 other rested units, it gets the plus 15k. So you can have that aggression. And there's also a grade 1 with Narissa that it sees 4 rearguards at the end of the turn, so it can go into Soul and actually recuperate hand advantage. And it leaves the front row empty. Now, Coral Assault will stay on board, just so you know, because we could only do 3 attacks with this deck build. And so you may be asking, like, what about Tidal Assault, though? What about Dennis? You know, your Nikki search and stuff like that. Dennis came out early in testing because one of the things I was trying was the Sentinel Blitz order, and I do play other orders. But man, when you rest one of your rearguards that you call from him, and then you get an order, essentially, it's a minus. Like, it's a hard minus. It doesn't help you at all. And I just felt like maybe I should use different cards to really help different purposes. And Dennis honestly didn't do much except for that. Yes, it can snowball over time if it's still a rearguard, but most of the time I ended up writing as my Vanguard because it's honestly, you'd rather have Pursuit and Coral Assault as rearguards anyway. So you rather sacrifice the Dennis in that sense as a Vanguard unit. Plus, you get an effect from it being a Vanguard, too, on top of that. So he got taken out. So I'm not playing any Dennis. Tidal Assault, yes, it's great, especially restanding for Alexandro's turns. You can stack triggers, even better. If you play Andre, even better, because it restands once more. But again, most of my matchups, I expected us to ride up and ride down. Not only that, you're facing against Force clans that are 10k. So Coral Assault won't be able to hit by himself, which kind of defeats the purpose. And then the second thing is that Coral Assault is usually only better or the best, I don't know, Alexandro's term. And so it wouldn't come up till later. And then didn't necessarily mean you would see it too. And even though you play revival cards, it was still risky because I changed the orders that I revived because deck size was important. And I even told myself, like, am I really removing Tidal Assault? from this build, just in general, right? And the other thing is that Tidal Assault is a target for Narukami for retiring and binding, and it really hurts, especially if you commit to the Alexandros turns and you start playing other cards to help resist and all this kind of stuff. But what I found out is maybe it's just better just have enough resources to be able to push through. And that's what she does. And here's what's cool. To my Neo Nectar brothers with tokens, when they're retired, when they're locked, when they're binded by Narukami, they disappear. Poof, gone. So what that means is that it does not add to their bind zone count. Their stun burst isn't as strong. Their G guards may not be live as soon as possible, or may not be as effective. You name it. Same thing with Vowing Reverse, Saber Reverse. It gets power for everything bounded, but if you're binding tokens and orders and triggers, it gets nothing. So this is super helpful for not only filling bodies for Pursuit and Coral, but also the Narukami matchup. It's so imperative because you now have an early game against Narukami, which you didn't before. You had to be very conservative at first and then go into the Gembo turn and kind of go from there and hope to survive a stun burst or an exterminate. The other thing that it helped solve was the grade 3 turn when you're trying to pseudo stride. You need bodies to rest, and so you may have just enough like of Pursuit Assault or Thavas, but then your other cards in your hand are shield value. What if they're PGs? What if they're heals? Or maybe they're grade 1s that honestly you would rather keep in hand because they're 10k shield instead of a booster that you really don't care much as numbers. And so when you have the Prod Palin, you can generate 3 rear guards in total. So you can use now Pursuit Assault and Thavas to rest all 3 of these units, and now you can technically go into your pseudo stride with Magnolia or Lambros, and boom. You could also call the units such as like Coral Assault or any other units just to help with your turn that way. Whatever makes sense, but it makes that even easier. It makes that more consistent. And then once I get to the stride game too, it actually has some purposes in the stride game as well that some people may not be expecting. Now for the grade 1s, we are playing 4 Nikki. You want to maximize on the consistency. When it rides Vanguard, check the top 7 for a Thavas or Dennis, but obviously it's just going to be Thavas. We want to ride that consistency as well. And then, of course, it can rest itself, bottom deck a normal unit to soul charge. This is fulfilling for the rest condition if you don't have like a Pursuit Assault, so you have this, or maybe a second copy or a Thavas extra copy to fulfill that condition. And it can recycle cards too if you really needed to. But thanks to 50 card shout out for these SPs though, for real. More SPs from 50 card shop. Use the code Jaime. Baragios, 2 of them. And so really I want Baragios because it's the top 5 grade 3 searcher. Increase the consistency of finding Thavas. I do not want to brick in this build because when Thavas bricks, it is bad. You pretty much lose 9 times out of 10. And this is a nice booster, but ultimately it's the consistency. I used it and bumped it up to 2 because of the Tetra Flood Hazard synergy that I was having, but I honestly just kept it because if you're going second to, you can search for the grade 3 heal guardians, and you need those to survive against certain matchups too. So it's super imperative. Narissa. So for Narissa, and I've seen also people reduce this to 3, and I actually reduced this to 3 because I was trying to make room for other cards like Orphea or Andre. I took those cards out. It was weird at first, but Orphea is GB1, Andre is also GB1, and again, you want cards live in the early game against those write down decks. And Narissa disappears too, so against even Narukami, this is super helpful too. So that's why I bumped it up to 4, and it gets power if you rest it, so you could just Soul Blast 1 to give plus 10k. It's not once per turn, so you could do this multiple times if you needed to. So on an XL2 circle, it can easily become a 13, 23 or 33k unit that you can rely on as well, and then just keep generating the advantage that you need as well. And it's a good jumbo target too, so if you need to get advantage back from even just the field that you're building up from the top 2 rested call, that helps. Now for more spice, but obviously this has been around for a little while, 3 Rollock. And so when we started seeing like Nightmare Dolls like a year ago, see like 4 Rollocks and stuff like that, some people experimented Rollocks with Thavas. And at first I was hesitant. I was like, how do you play Rollocks in Thavas? Because Thavas is such a piece reliant type of deck. Aquaforce in general, like every piece matters, every card matters. It's deliberate. And so Rollock is deliberate in this deck, and I think 3 is just the right number. Again, you need to survive the early game. So if you're playing the grade 2 game or you ride up and ride back down, Rollock is live as a PG. So again, if you ride down back as a grade 2, you can use this as a 1-card PG, which can come up against certain decks. Even going second, it's easier to survive certain turns. Some Vanguards at grade 3 get crits or something like D-Police and so on. So it's just super helpful just to be able to like 1-card PG versus using a bunch of cards from your hand that are essential pieces as well. Worst case scenario in the stride game, you can just guard with these with 10k shield. There's still 10k shield. or you can discard them as, PG cost. The last of the grade ones, it's 2 orders, Frozen Resentment. So Frozen Resentment is similar to Spiritual Body Condensation. It's a revival order. You Soul Blast 1, check the top 3, you pick 1, mill it, and then you can Superior Call 1 unit from the drop zone. And so this is how you're able to revive your units. And now you may be asking, why don't you use Spiritual Body Condensation? You get the +5. This is useful in the early game for consistency reasons. I value the consistency a lot because there will be turns where you may have to ride the Pursuit Assault, but you don't have a follow-up Pursuit Assault to be able to rest for the grade 3 turn. So this can be also, if you didn't see any of those essential pieces yet, this helps you dig deeper, 3 more cards into your deck to potentially find that piece that you may need. I tried early on to help kind of dictate that turn, and you could even mill, like if you didn't get anything or you just didn't see it, you can mill the grade 4 like a Magnolia or a Lambros, and then if you have the Nikki, it gives Nikki fodder to make sure you're able to bottom deck a normal unit and soul charge. But because you bottom deck an Elder or a Lambros, you're guaranteed to not draw into it, because we've been in those moments where we use Pursuit Assault, we draw into that grade 4, which we were hoping to ride that same turn, and it sucks. But this is also good in the late game too, like with your Vallejo turns or Faraga turns, you can revive Pursuit Assaults, your Coral Assaults. Those are essential pieces. And so just be wary. The errata for this card is that you have to actually mill a card from the top 3. There was an errata, so look that up. I actually got these replaced too at the event too. Onto the triggers, we are playing 4 of the Stride crit, 3 of the Into Assault crit, 1 Overdress over trigger, the Blessed Favor, 4 PG draws, and 1 of the starter, of course. But I want to highlight the triggers a little bit. I was actually trying 3 PG draw and then change this into a stoicheia draw trigger to make room for the Blitz order Sentinel. But ultimately, I felt like you needed every piece or every single room of the deck to be able to have combo pieces. So I went back to the 4 draw PG, and honestly, it never looked back. It also wasn't that great having the stoicheia draw trigger, knowing that maybe a draw PG would have been better in Thavas, so it kind of just was, it was okay. It wasn't the best. And your over trigger is really like the 5th draw or the 8th crit. You have a front, it heals, it's the 5th heal. So it's super helpful just to have this, especially if you not damage check it. If you check it offensively at the right time, it actually has value. And remember, you have front effects, so your opponent may want to pass something, and then you can give the front power to your full front row, and then give the 100 million to like another rear guard, so you can still hit numbers after that. So just be mindful of that. And then of course you want to stride and then have something into Saul. This is good for Gembo targets as well, to be able to generate advantage and give your Vanguard power. This is also good for the Vallejo's turns too, so if you need to draw into a piece before you do the Superior Call, it's even helpful. Now into the strides, we're playing 2 Gembo. So Gembo again, check top 7, call 2 Rested, Narisug, Pursuit Assaults, Coral Assaults, you name it, get advantage. And for every 2 Rested when it attacks, you can counterblast 1, draw a card, retire 1 of your opponents. And then if you drew 3 cards, you stand 2 units. Super helpful. It's a turn that helps with attrition, gain advantage, apply a little bit of pressure, and you flip anything in the G zone. So 9 times out of 10, you'll be flipping the G guard Gophilia, so you're able to countercharge. So if you're still at low damage, it would be good just to have an on-demand countercharge if you need to. Sometimes your opponent may either damage the Nayo afterwards or just give you 1 counterblast where you may need 2. So that's where it comes out helpful in that sense. Now for some of the G zone spice, we're playing 2 Cyclones. Why? Your tokens don't have skills, so that's why. So it has the G-Zone effect, so when you flip it with Gemble or other cards, the tokens will get continuous on your turn plus 5k. So your tokens automatically become 10k attackers and boosters. If your tokens on the Excel Circle, guess what? It becomes 15k. That's going to come up soon, but it can attack and poke Vanguards when you have multiple Excel Circles. So it can help with multiple attacks if you need to, and just bigger boosters too in general. So Aquaforce likes to make better numbers if possible, and so this card helps. Even just flipping 1 Cyclone does a lot, but when you flip the 2, now your tokens are 15k base on their own, and then 20k on the XL2 circle, so it makes really good numbers over time. Also, shout out to David Song for this suggestion too, because we're talking about the tokens, and this is another way besides the Genoa, so shout out to you, amigo. Now, probably the most MVP stride that's mid-game and also potentially finishing game is Vallejo's. Again, David Song last year when he's top, he told me the importance of this card. So really what we have to think about sometimes is the triggers that hold back Aquaforce, and also the over trigger. People are still complaining about the fact that a damage check over trigger stops your turn. Vallejo says no. You do your turn as you wanted to do. So if your opponent's at 2 to 3 damage still, or maybe they're at 4 to 5, this card is so good because you can now guarantee your attacks and what to take from their hand. And you have no fear of them getting triggers or just an over trigger to get 100 million on their Vanguard. You have no fear at all. It's guaranteed at that point that you're going to do your turn as you planned it out, which is great. So on attack, counterblast 1, you flip something. Guess what? A Cyclone, for example. You can call up to 2 for each card face up from your hand to rearguard. And then if you have 2 or more face-up cards in the G-Zone, your opponent's locked at 11k. So that's how it happens. So what you want to do is attack first with a couple pokes. If they get a trigger, that's when you kind of maybe have to attack and then bring them down to back to 11k. And then even after that, if they get any triggers, they're completely useless. But what's really cool too, and this is what I've noticed with playtesting, when you're doing the right up, right down game, and then you go into jumboed, and then if you're doing this, you are getting close to deck out because you're going through so much of your deck by drawing throughout those turns and also drive checks and everything like that. So cards like Prod Pollen over here, she's able to counterblast 1 and get 2 tokens, right? It's on place. So if you want to not draw as much from your deck, you can call Prod Pollen, counterblast 1, and generate the tokens on Excel circles or even just make better columns. And now you have more attacks than the cards than you would call. This is also something to kind of like bluff your opponent when they see your hand if it's really small. And it's like you can't even call that many regards. So you're not going to have 4 more attacks after this if you have 2 Excel circles, for example. So you may actually bluff them out and they're like, oh, you have the tokens. And oh, Cyclone's face up. Oh, the tokens are 15k. I'm 11k. Oh, shoot, they actually hit. All these things, right? And so they may not be expecting that. And again, this can also be during the main phase where you build up a decent field to poke first, especially if you already have a Cyclone, and then you call Pursuit Assault, and then you call Coral Assault to be able to hit beaters while your opponent's at 11k. This card does so much, even in the stride turns, even in the early game, and just throughout, even with Jumbo. With Jumbo, when you check the top 7, you can call this and another, like let's say Narissa as rested, generate the 2 tokens, you now have 4 bodies to work with. And if you already have a card or 2 on the field from the prior turn, you don't have to commit any cards from hand. And you just plus from Jumbo's following effects from on attack. And it's like, holy crap. And then against Stunverse, against Murakami in general, they can bind this, the other rear guard, and then if you have Coral Assault and Narissa that went into Soul, the only thing left are the tokens. So then guess what? You bind the tokens, but guess what? Tokens just disappear. They don't count to the bind zone. So it just helps even when the Murakami matchup. Super vital. And then for the rest of the sides, didn't come up as often, but I'm going to go quickly with these. For August, restand the full board if you can for a face-up card. It generates an Excel circle so you can move something in the back row into as another attacker. This is where I was like, Genovis is like a mini Ferragus. Well, Ferragus is the main Ferragus turn. And so, yes, this is the card reveal that I did for Aquaforce a while back too as well. This card is still good as a finisher, so you may go into Jumbo, Valleos, and then Ferragus to finish them off, especially if you know the OTs out of their deck, and if they're at 5 damage, it's the perfect time to use Ferragus. Then you could always go into Alexandra if you need to, depending on the situation. I did not use Alexandras at all in this event. And honestly, because I took out restanders, the value of Alexandros has dwindled. But it's good to have 1 extra copy just in case, especially if for August you don't have enough rear guards or Genovia's turn, it just doesn't work. So you may as well have 2 rear guards and then Alexandros can restand them if you can't even use Valleos, for example. So it just really depends. It's one of those niche cards now that you can fall back into. And sort of Alexandros is Lambro. So if you don't have any counterblast, this can be a way to do so. But again, I use the Gavilia to countercharge. And what's cool about Valleos too, real quick, is that Valleos carries only 2 or more face up in the G zone to 11k lock. And that's really what you cared about. And if you have 2 or more face up, that means you can call 4 rear guards. You have 2 Excel circles and you have 2 rear guard columns. So that's actually enough to call 4 rear guards and have 4 more attacks. So it works out. So, you know, Lambros doesn't really come up as often, but it's good to have a pair. And then Megiddo, just in case I got Drachma and I had an extra grade 2 and, you know, ultimate stride if I needed to, or I don't have any pieces and they're in the drop zone, I can just ultimate stride. But it never came up. And real quickly with the G guards, 2 Ionis, if you have a field, this is your biggest shield. It also gives resist and they can't hit your units, so it protects them, like Coral Assault, Pursuit. Well, Coral Assault, most of the time it goes away, but if you're close to deck out, you might leave 1. But you know what I mean. Also, you have the one that came from the recent premium collection, Dianera, also I revealed. So you can counterblast one, get 20k when it's for fourth or more battle. But if it's the first one, you can get plus 5k. So this is useful against if you're going against Nightmare Dolls or maybe like Norakami. It can help a little bit with that. It just depends on the numbers that they make and also the damage checks that you get. So your Vanguard becomes 17k. But if you get triggers, now you're 27. Then you become 37. And it's just big enough to actually really help you with your guarding. And then also it's not rearguard dependent too. So that helps. You know, it's wave dependent, but not rearguard dependent. So it's like better than Ionis in that sense. 2 Gaphilia. One you'll flip most of the time. And then the other one's just in case for the second and third battle for the extra 5k. We need better G-guards for real. But this is more utility for countercharging. And if you face Lane Joker, you can unlock and undelete. This is your jumbo target outside of Cyclone, especially if you're low damage. And then lastly, we have the Ice Barrier. Ice Barrier is just free for more battle. Or the first time get plus 10k. So it just depends on the shield value. Now I just want to show some key plays with the grade 2 like I mentioned. So let's say you took your damage and you write to grade 2. You can now call the Prod Pollen, Counterblast 1, generate your 2 tokens. So if you want to do it this way, and then you have your Narissa over here. Here, let me expand this a little bit. There we go. It's a little bit better. This is what your field could look like. So you can have a 9k poke, you can have a 14k poke. And you can attack as 13. If you have the extra soul, you can rest these 2 tokens, the token and then Narissa, and then restand a much bigger column. And then at the end of the turn, again, you have 4 more rested rearguards. This goes into soul, and you draw a card. So it's just super helpful. And again, on your grade 3 turn, this is what your field could look like. And you generate the tokens and see how it could just help fill the board easily. And then you rest your rearguards. And then let's say you do Lambros, restand everything. And then you can like poke with the 14. Then the 19, and then this is big, and then Lambros, Soul Blast to grade 3, and then you actually Counterblast, restand the column, and attack for 5 attacks. And again, look, I have no soul. Or also can go first, and then you retire your grade 4, and boom, you're back to grade 2. Just that easy. And then, of course, you have Narissa to draw another card too as well. So very vital, and I just want to show that off. And obviously, you know, that's just some key plays real quickly. I just wanted to show off. Looking back at it, I think I did really good choices. I did my best. I control what I could. I went X4. Yeah, X4, unfortunately. I faced Steam Maiden, 4 Norakami in a row, and then 1 Nightmare Dolls. And I actually talk about that in the vlog, so you can click on the vlog and see my actual feedback on that, so it doesn't take long on this video. How those matchups went about too. But you know, it was what I expected. It's an uphill battle. It's a contender. It's not like a tier 0 deck, so you definitely have to fight for it, and you're facing world-class players, so every little thing counts. And so I think it's just, you know, at this level of worlds, you're going to face like nothing but meta, and then maybe some wacky thing that people aren't expecting. That is a very good player on piloting that deck. So that was the expectation, you know, such as like spikes or dimension police and so on. So very vital. And so I just wanted to show this off. So it was an amazing weekend. Again, check out the vlog so you can see the full experience if you're curious about it too. Thanks again. And if you want to up your skill level, go ahead and check me out on Metafy as well. I love to help you fill in the gaps and also get your own invite to Worlds for next year. And I look forward to actually meeting you there and also signing a card that you would like me to sign as well. Also, real quick shout out to Casey, Cypher, Duke Cardfight, Armando, and David Song for all playtesting with me with specific matchups. That's been a big help too. So I wanted to make sure I gave credit where credit is due. So thanks to those amigos and everybody else that has helped me along this journey too as well. And then I'll go, of course, use the affiliate links to get a 5%, 10% discounts on the card purchases. And I'll see you until the next one. Thanks, amigos. Bye.